Java to JavaScript lesson number 8. Define JavaScript modules. In the previous tutorial, we discovered that jQuery-UI detects if RequireJS is loaded or not by using type of defined, whether the defined function is defined, and inside the defined function, does it have an AMD flag turned on. In this particular case, we cannot check the type of require function, as common.js, which is another way of loading JavaScript, defines a require function as well. So we must test if the defined function is defined inside one of the JavaScript that is loaded before, such as RequireJS. So if RequireJS is loaded, it defines the jQuery-UI as an AMD module or RequireJS module with a dependency of jQuery, such that will enforce jQuery to be loaded first before the jQuery-UI is loaded. Let's take a look at how do we define modules, different types of modules in RequireJS. The first type of RequireJS module or AMD module is a very simple one. It is called simple key value pairs. That is very similar to Java's interface, especially the data members or the constants of the Java interface. Because in Java interface, all data members are constants. The way to define the simple key value pairs in RequireJS is to pass a JavaScript object notation JSON into the defined function. So as long as we put in a JSON with the key and the value, we can define it. For example, we put in pi as the key and the value of pi as the value of the JSON object inside the key value pair. And that's how we define constants in RequireJS modules. The second type of module is we define a module, a functional module without dependencies. That is very similar to the standalone Java classes without any imports. The way to do it is to pass a constructor function or a callback function, if you will, in the JavaScript terms, into the RequireJS defined function. So this constructor function or callback function will be called when this particular JavaScript code is loaded using the require function at the other end. And this particular constructor function or callback function will return the any kind of JavaScript artifacts such as JSON or function or a mixture of both to the other end of the RequireJS. The third type of a functional module is we can define a functional module with dependencies. This is similar to Java class with imports from other Java classes. So the way to do it is to pass a dependencies array as the first parameter and a constructor function or callback function into the RequireJS defined function as a second parameter. So let's take a look at the example here. So inside the defined function, we have two parameters. The first one is the array of dependencies. Currently, we have a jQuery as the dependencies. And then we pass in a constructor function or a callback function. And then this function is being called after both Lodash and jQuery libraries are loaded. And the underscore inside the constructor function is the Lodash library. The $ inside the constructor function is the jQuery library. And then this constructor or callback returns any kind of JavaScript artifact, just like the previous functional module without the dependencies. And there's one point that is very important. The order of the dependencies that is passed into the defined function as the first parameter must match the order of the formal parameters within the constructor or callback function. This is very important because if we mix it up, it just won't work. As we discussed in the previous tutorial, jQuery-UI checks for the existence of RequireJS. So let's take a look at the jQuery-UI's library code. Let's go to the node modules, look for jQuery-UI bundle. This one right here. And let's take a look at the jQuery-UI.js. So in the library, jQuery-UI is checking for the definition of defined is a function, and make sure the definition of define.amd exists. If both of these conditions are true, then we'll make sure we define the jQuery-UI module with the dependency of jQuery. This is what we have talked about last time. So how do we define our own modules like this with the dependencies? Let's take a look. Let's create in here in the basic startup folder, features. As an example of building a modular application, let's build an application that calculates area of multiple geometric shapes. Let's create a square.js JavaScript file. Let's go to features and then new file. Okay, square.js. Okay, so let's put the formula into the comment. So area of square equals to side times side, or square of a side. So when we define a module, we would like to use the define function that is provided by RequireJS. And since we don't have any dependency for calculating the area of a square, we can just type in function. And that will be the starting point of defining the module. So you can think of it, this function is the module. Alright. And then this particular function will return another function, because we need a function to calculate the area of the square. So let's create another function, an anomalous function, with the side, the length of the side of the square as a parameter. Okay. And then we will return the side times side, which is the side square basically. So after we define the function for calculating the area of squares, let's load this JavaScript file. So what we got to do is go to main.js. Because square.js is not a library, it is actually a custom JavaScript file that we have, or we can say it is a JavaScript module that is built into this application. So let's set up the base URL to be features. From this point on, all of the JavaScript files are going to be located in this features folder. After we set up the base URL, we need to require the square.js JavaScript file. So let's do that. Comma square. Again, notice that RequireJS can only load JavaScript files, so we can skip the .js extension in here. Let's save that. Let's start up our application. So npm run dev. Alright, we see that our square.javascripts inside the features folder are loaded. So let's turn on the debugger and see whether it is being loaded into the browser. Alright, let's go to network. Let's reload and see. So we see that our square.js is loaded properly. Alright. So let's use that. Let's go to here. Alright, since we have the square right here, let's put in say jQuery-UI, comma, which matches this, bootstrap, that matches that, and square. All right, let's do a calculations here. So let's create a variable, area equals to, let's say area of square equals to square, and let's put in a side. All right, because this particular square module, square.js module, loads this particular function, and this is the function that is being returned from this particular module. So we have a function that takes in the length of the side, and then we'll calculate the area of the square using the side and return it. So in main.js, we have the area of square right here. Let's print it out. Console.log area of square equals to area of square. Let's close this. Let's save it. All right. Let's go to the console. And we have the area of square equals to 4. So we did the calculations. We know that we load the library, and we can make use of the library to calculate the area of a square. Okay? So this way is the way to define a module, and inside the module we define a function which does not have any dependencies. Okay? Alright, let's calculate the area of a circle. So let's do the same thing. We new a file, call it circle.js. Okay, in the main function, we load the circle. Right, and then in here we do the same thing, circle. Notice that the order of this array must match the order of these formal parameters. Okay, so in here we do the same thing. Let's define a function, and the input of the, and this is, since this is defining a module, this is defining a module for the area of the circle. So let's return another function just like before, and the function take in a radius, and then the calculation is, will return a math.py times radius times radius. Let's give it a comment in terms of the area of circle. So area of circle equals to pi r, which is the radius, square, so radius. All right, let's save it. And let's go back to the main function. We have circle right here. So let's do a var area of circle equals to circle. Let's say, let's use 2 again. Okay. Console.log area of circle equals to area of circle. Let's save it. So this is the area of the circle with a radius of 2. All right. Okay, say for example, we would like to use our own version of pi because maybe the pi that we have is with too many decimal places. Say we would like to create some kind of constant. Okay, so let's create another file inside features. Let's call it constants.js. Okay, let's go back to main. Let's make sure we load that file. Okay, so this time let's put it in front of it. So constants, and we remember we got to match the order of the formal parameters with the array in between bootstrap and square. So let's put it here. Constants. All right. So we have the constant right here. However, if we would like to use this constant inside a circle, we will need to put this constant inside the circle like this. So let's see. Let's make sure it loads properly in terms of the constant. So the constant is loaded right here. Okay, and the constant is loaded before the circle. All right, let's make it such that the constant is loaded after the circle. So let's take this, cut it, and then put it here, put it at the back of the circle, behind it. And remember, if we do that, we need to move the constant variable, the formal parameters to the back as well, so that the order of the array must match the order of the formal parameters. All right, let's reload and see. So now the constant is being loaded after the circle. However, we know that we need to have the constant before the circle. All right, so what we got to do is go into circles, and from here we just say, okay, we need the constant file. All right, and we put the constant right here, and we'll replace this with the constants pi. All right. However, we haven't got anything in here. So let's take a look at the console and see. It is aborted because the constant is needed by the circle. So let's go back to the circle. Oops, it's constants. Okay. So the constants is needed by the circle JavaScript. So in here, let's go back here. We know that alright, so the constant is still loaded at the back. Okay. Let's try put in the constants. So what we got to do is define again. And this time, we are defining just the values. Alright. So this constant has a pi, and the value is 3.14. Let's suppose this is what we put in for the pi. So let's go back here. Constant is still loaded after the circle. Let's go to console. But the area of the circle is calculated properly. So why? Why would that happen? The constant is actually loaded after the circle. Okay. Let's go back to the main function. The reason is when we load the circle, it automatically requires constant to be loaded first. Similar to the situation as the jQuery-UI. Even though in jQuery-UI it loads first, however, it actually looks for jQuery in the previous case. So this time it works just the same. So what we have here, it hits the circle, it loads in the circle.js JavaScript file, but inside here it defined we need constants.js to load first. So after it loads this one, it loads the constant immediately. And then after the constant.js file is being loaded, then we execute this callback function. So that's why it works. Alright, so let's remove the constant right here. Let's see whether it will work or not. So in here, again, we have constants.js load after the circles. Alright. And let's go to the console, and we still have the value. Notice that the way it loads is like it loads the dependency that is directly indicated in the main.js first. And then it subsequently goes inside into individual ones like the circle.js and look into what are the dependencies of the circle.js and load that. Today we have talked about custom JavaScript modules. We have talked about an independent one that does not depend on anything else outside. And we talk about another type of JavaScript module which has a dependency to some other JavaScript modules, like the constants. And also we talk about how to define a custom module which just returns the values. So stay tuned for more of the calculations in terms of other geometric shapes within this application. Thank you.